In a few minutes, we shall play the prelude of Debussy, but first I thought to spend a little time on talking about the Berlioz. There's a good program note you can read which gives the story, but I thought there's no better thing than to hear some of the melodies that words can only describe, but to actually hear a little bit of the telling of the story. Now, this symphony of Berlioz was also considered very modern. You could say that from this moment on, this symphony marks the end of classical music. You know, was Beethoven early romantic or late classical? Berlioz has answered, we are into a new era. Berlioz is the first of the composers they all felt was very modern. Well, some people thought he was very modern, other people thought he was completely mad. So you choose. Now, I'm going to just quickly take us through the symphony to show what the story is. Berlioz was born and grew up near the French Alps, so sort of down middle of France, over on the right-hand side a bit. And he wanted to be a musician, and his father said, "Nonsense, you idiot. No one can be a musician." By the way, Berlioz didn't really play any music. He just loved music. So his father said, "I will support you if you go to Paris to study to be a doctor." And Berlioz thought, Paris, yeah, that's a good deal. So before he left the Alps, though, he wrote a song. And we hear the song. It's a sad farewell song saying, "Maybe I shall never return." And it's played, you hear it at the very beginning of the symphony, played by the violins. This is the first excerpt. Now you hear, this is clearly romantic music from the start. He goes to Paris, he starts to study to be a doctor. He hates it. Standing there with his feet covered in blood, chopping up bodies, is not his idea of fun. But what is fun, he goes to the theatre, he goes to the opera, and he meets three things that change his life, and they are the music of Beethoven, which is then coming to France. He hears two of the symphonies only before he composes a symphony. I want to write a symphony. Wow, what amazing music this is. So number one is Beethoven. Number two is Shakespeare. Now the extraordinary thing is an English theatre company came to Paris and did Othello of Shakespeare. They did Romeo and Juliet. They did Hamlet. And Berlioz went every night. He couldn't believe it. The strange thing is, he didn't understand a word of English, and the plays were in English. But he fell in love with Shakespeare. And then he went away and read the plays in French, and later learned some English to read them in English also. And the third thing he fell in love with was the lady acting in the plays. So in Othello, she was Desdemona. She was Juliet in Romeo and Juliet. And in Hamlet, she was Ophelia. And her name was Harriet Smithson, who spoke no French, and Berlioz spoke no English. And so when he knocked on her door and sent letters to her, she thought he was crazy. I think she was right, but he fell in love with her. It's pathetic. It's like going to the cinema and falling in love with the leading lady. You know, pathetic. But being a very sensitive, romantic man, the idea of Harriet in his mind also became a musical melody. And that's what you hear through this symphony. And this is, if I call it the Harriet melody, this is the melody that will appear through the symphony. There we are. He called it an idée fixe, an idea fixed in his head. And then wherever he goes, he has this melody in his head, this love for Harriet. So, for example, the second movement, I should say the first movement is, as Berlioz said, it's like how I felt inside, sometimes happy, sometimes angry. I was in love, and it's all those emotions. The second movement he finds himself at a dance, and there's some lovely dance music going on. We'll play the first dance melody. Beautiful. You can imagine the elegant gentlemen and ladies dancing, and then through the crowd, he sees Harriet, his beloved. And so we hear the melody, and we'll play you where the moment he sees her, you hear the Harriet melody, and then you'll also notice as that is going on, the violins, the violas are still doing the dance, but Berlioz is just staring at the love of his life.